The big legacy news networks currently average just 1.2 million viewers a weeknight, and those numbers are only going to get lower. Legacy media is dying, and the younger generation has moved on. Legacy media panders. Legacy media lies. Legacy media does not know what the truth is, and they don't care about it. Legacy media is a dumpster fire. This is why we few in our wild imaginations have started the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Our goal is to take down the legacy media giant of the last 50 years with our 5 stones. We started in 2016 with our flagship show, Cross Politic. Since those small beginnings, we now air on DirecTV. Our broader podcast network now gets over 4 million downloads a year. And our Fight Laugh Feast pub, which includes TV shows like This America, The Rowdy Christian's Guide, Pastors in Politics, and As the Lord Pleases, with your support, many more to come. Our goal is to become the flagship new media 2.0 network over the next 50 years and take over nightly news, sports, sitcoms, hunting shows, and more, all conveniently stored for you in our Fight Laugh Feast pub. We're already reaching the next generation through our podcast shows on YouTube, X, and our pub, while also tapping into legacy media audiences by airing our shows on TV through DirecTV and Xfinity. We have made a lot of progress with some duct tape and a good bit of intuition and a lot of sweat. And now we need your support more than ever. The TV networks have had such a negative impact on our households, and we're trying, by the grace of God, to put a stop to that. We have the opportunity. We just need the army. Now more than ever, we need you to join our pub to help us reach our goal of 1 million pub supporters in the next 5 years. There's no way around it. Competing with Fox and the Alphabet networks without money is virtually impossible. It's cheap for you to join. And when you do, you're combining your small monthly support with a growing army of like-minded Christians. We have thousands, we need millions. So if you want more of the Alphabet network's misinformation and lies, don't join. But if you want to give us a mere 5 stones, then please join the pub, and together we will take a swing at the head of big media, all the while fighting, laughing, and feasting to the glory of God.
Hey y'all, welcome to WaterBreak. It's good to be with you. We're back. It's the new year. And let me adjust that music a little bit. It's loud. This is our first WaterBreak show back in the new year. Maybe we'll do like a New Year food show coming up. You know, I don't know. What your food goals be? How much weight you should lose this year. We had a good Christmas, good New Year's break, and we've been out since I'll say the second week of December. It's been a long time, yeah. It's been a while. So it's good to be back with you this week. This show, we actually had Doug booked in December, and we had like a crazy day or week or something. Our kids got sick in basketball and all that stuff. So
you had a basketball conflict.
We had to cancel on Doug. That's right. I had to leave for early game. Yeah. And so we ended up having to cancel Doug, but Doug was gracious enough to reschedule and come back on the show. Doug, I read his book, Confessions of a Food Catholic. I think twice now. I think one time years ago when it first was released, and then I listened to it audibly this last year because me and Annie were doing WaterBreak, and I wanted to remind myself some of the things you'd been teaching in that. So really grateful to have Pastor Wilson on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Happy to.
Our first lowly WaterBreak show with Pastor Wilson. Very grateful for it. And you wrote the book Confessions of a Food Catholic 7 years ago, 8 years ago now, something.
I have no idea. Probably. I have no idea.
Yeah, who cares now? It's been written. You can't do anything about it now.
You're like, I don't know.
And I had been, reading your blog and seeing a lot of your concerns about food and stuff over the years before that, more theological concerns. And I mean, your book gets into practical stuff, but I wanted to first maybe talk about what's a good theology of food. The scriptures is pretty clear that in general, the earth is the Lord's in all its fullness. And it said that, Paul said that as he was referring to food.
Right.
And so a lot of the food peculiarities that we have and food, diets and stuff like that seem to conflict a little bit with like a broader theology of food, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And what it's driving. Would love to kind of just give a good defense or biblical defense of how we should be thinking about food as Christians.
So the reason I wrote the book was I was seeing a lot of dissension developing between Christians over food issues. And in Scripture, it's far more important who you're eating with than what you're eating.
And praying over your food.
Right.
Who you're eating with, and that you're praying over your food, giving thanks.
You're giving thanks to God.
Yeah.
And enjoying fellowship across the table with someone who doesn't live exactly the way you do. It's more important that you fellowship with that person than it is that you stick to your own peculiar thing. And I was, as a pastor, I was reacting to people who were invited over to someone's house for lunch, and they brought their own food. It's sort of like
wow.
On a domestic level, not an ecclesiastical level, but it's domestic level. It's like, I'm going to excommunicate you. I'm not going to share a meal with you. So the word companion comes from the Latin com and panis, with bread. A companion is someone who shares bread with you.
Okay.
You break bread, you share a meal. This is something you see all the way through the Bible. And it culminates, of course, in the Lord's Supper. We partake of Christ in the Lord's Supper. And that's sort of the template for our ordinary table fellowship.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do was avoid or head off Christians getting too finicky about what they will and will not eat.
Yeah.
And it can go in either direction. So, for example, someone might be really fastidious about, their granola yogurt lifestyle, or shredded wheat lawn clippings. Salad,
beet pulp,
salads with ponderosa bark in it.
Yeah.
Things. There's that extreme.
Yeah.
But then there's the person who just fast foods everything, and they have got a decided groove,
a certain palate,
certain palate. And as soon as you get to the point where you allow that to disrupt your fellowship with a fellow Christian, then you're missing the point.
Yeah. Now it seems, and so that seems like a fair assessment of Paul's broader principle or concerns.
Right.
And the only, I guess, exception that we see in the Bible is when it comes to the weaker brother. Maybe rethink a little bit how you're handling the weaker brother when it comes to food and drink.
Correct. And the weaker brother issue is an important one, because the weaker brother is the person who was 3 weeks ago worshiping Aphrodite.
Yeah, right.
And of course, there were sacrifices made to her in the temple.
Yeah.
And one of the best places to get a roast in ancient Corinth was the shambles, the meat market for food that had been offered to idols.
Yeah.
And so if someone was just weeks ago worshiping this goddess, and then they see you buying food from that temple, and then they say, oh, he's a strong Christian, he can do that, I can do that.
Yeah.
And so he goes and buys the meat, but then he gets sucked back into the idolatry part.
Right.
The issue is not the meat. The issue is the idolatry
behind it.
Yeah. So a modern example would be a person who was a drunk, just getting drunk all the time. They get saved. They've been dry for 6 months.
Yeah.
Everything's going much better for them. They see an older Christian drinking, which is fine. That's biblical. And they say, oh, I can do that.
Right.
Well, they might not be able to do that.
Right.
Because in their mind, they can't disassociate the drinking from the drunkenness. For them, it's still a package deal.
Right.
Right. And so the Bible tells the stronger brother to forego whatever privilege it is you have,
right,
to avoid stumbling that weaker brother. At the same time, Paul says in Colossians that why do you submit to decrees saying do not handle, do not taste, do not touch? So we're supposed to bend over backwards and go the second, third, fourth, fifth mile for a weaker brother. And we're not supposed to bend an inch for the legalist.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And the danger is that sometimes the weaker brother gets discipled by the legalist,
Right.
and the weaker brother parrots legalist statements,
Right.
and you might start treating him like a legalist when he's actually a weaker brother.
That's right.
So you have to be careful with all of this stuff, and the principle is people first.
Yeah.
People first. Your dietary preferences are not first.
Yeah.
Then you have in the Old Testament, you have a very strict holiness code. Basically, God outlaws eating bottom feeders.
Yeah.
All right. Blackened catfish is out.
Yeah. Yeah. So good.
spoken like a new covenant Gentile.
That's right. Yeah.
So that is excluded. But what God was doing with the holiness code in the Old Testament was teaching by very rudimentary means the difference between holy and unholy.
Yeah. Right.
This, not that. It was training wheels.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
In the new covenant, in Mark, Jesus declares all foods clean.
Yep.
Peter, when he has the vision in Acts of the
Pigs.
Gentiles
Yep.
being accepted, it's given to him under the image of a sheet full of unclean animals. And
Right.
Peter's told to arise, kill, and eat.
Right.
So we are in the new covenant, all foods are declared clean with regard to spiritual contamination.
Uh-huh.
I'm not any better with God having eaten or abstained. I'm not farther away from God if I partake. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
It does have to do with whether you're loving people.
Right.
Right. So if someone offers you a plate full of the meal they fixed, and you say, "Take it away. I hate that stuff. You're stupid. You're stupid. You stupid cook."
Yeah.
The problem is not the food.
Yeah.
The problem is your relationship with that person.
Yeah.
That's where the contamination is.
Yeah. Now, how do you? I was I had a friend who grew up in Baptist circles, and he never got drunk before, and he, never did anything like that. But when we were talking about alcohol, he asked for me not to drink in front of him because he didn't think it was appropriate because others might be watching, whatever, that kind of thing. And my response to him was, well, then are you the weaker brother here? Because that's the only way I'd be happy to, if you're the weaker brother.
Right.
And he said, no, I'm not. And I was like, well, then we're good. Right.
Right.
Now, how do you handle, okay, so we got the food thing and then the exercise thing.
Right.
Paul, the one verse me and my wife talked about in this exercise side of things, 1 Timothy 8, godly, physical exercise profits some, godly exercise profits more.
Right.
I haven't actually gotten into the Greek in under the surface in that verse, but it's obviously at least comparing your time physically and what you're doing versus your time spiritually and how you're seeking God,
right,
and everything. Go ahead, please.
And the training there, and Paul uses this sort of illustration elsewhere also, is physical training is teleological, just like all discipline and training is.
Yeah.
So if you want to run in the Olympics, you must train.
Yeah. Hard.
If you want to box, if you want to play in the NFL, if you want to play in the NBA, you can't just say, "Gee, wouldn't it be nice?" and then walk in.
Yeah. It takes time to get there. Yeah.
Paul teaches that the athlete must compete according to the rules. He buffets his body, Paul says, but it's teleological. It's directed at a particular
end goal.
There's an end goal.
Okay.
Now, what has happened is, and there's always there. I'm thinking pastorally and how people work. There's always something. There's you can go too far this way, go too far that way. In America today, a lot of people think that the way that we look at the world, we just assume that our eyes are calibrated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dialed in. We got it. We know what's going on. We can see
today,
it. Yeah.
Today we are balanced.
Yeah.
But back in Marilyn Monroe era, one time I was walking in a mall, and there was a card shop there, and they had a cardboard cutout of
Marilyn Monroe,
Monroe, life-size cutout out in the hall of the mall. And she's a fire plug.
Yeah. Yeah.
Little short. And I think, and in her era, the average Miss America, the ideal, was 40 pounds heavier
than now.
Than now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, but that was not just, they had all kinds of problems. No, that was their ideal. That's what they were striving for. And so
it wasn't like the Elizabethan area even more big boned. They liked it.
Right.
Yeah.
They liked it. Well, but then you say, what is Rubens, the classical painter? What is his ideal female body?
Yeah.
What is the ideal female 40 years ago and today? And then is it going to be what it is today 50 years from now?
Right.
Well,
Probably not. Yeah.
Almost certainly not. Now, and that means that you have to evaluate and gauge the difference between things that we learn about health and fitness.
Yeah.
The things that are good for you, the things that are going to lay you up, the things that are going to make you age prematurely, as actual science progresses, we learn more.
Yeah.
As you mentioned before the show, this is a part of the problem is that COVID made a bunch of people think, how much about all of this have I been lied to? Yeah. Lied to. But I think we should accept in principle that science can progress, knowledge of health and fitness can progress.
Yeah.
And that would be a good thing for us to take on board the things that we learn. But fads and fashions also oscillate.
Yeah.
Come
and go.
They come and go.
Yeah.
So what is the fad? What's the fashion? And what's the fitness issue? What's the good stewardship issue?
Okay.
So you don't want to smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day on stewardship grounds. Right.
And that's something you would objectively say, hey, in the 40s, we shouldn't have done it. And hey, 2024, we shouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Before the Surgeon General's report on cigarettes, the nickname for cigarettes was coffin nails.
Yeah.
So here are these coffin nails. Everybody knew, okay, this isn't
not the best health for me.
This is not, if you want to be an Olympic runner, this is probably not something to add to your regimen.
Yeah. Even though the French bicyclists were smoking at the end of their matches and all.
So at the same time, and this goes back to the whole COVID thing, where people were saying, "I believe the science."
Yeah.
No, you believe the television.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a difference between believing
or mainstream media
or the mainstream media. You believe the television. And so, for example, if a person smokes, if 100 people smoke 100 people smoke a pack of Camels, unfiltered Camels a day, then 15 of those 100 are going to get lung cancer. 85 won't.
Yeah.
Right. Now, we've been trained to think that, I'm not saying that smoking cigarettes is a good idea. I don't think it's a good stewardship. I don't recommend it. We don't need, your body doesn't need additional dependencies.
Right.
But so I'm just saying we are scared away from things instead of informed.
Yeah.
So we think that smoking a cigarette and getting lung cancer is like putting the 8-ball in the corner pocket or like dropping a bowling ball. If you do this, that happens. Well, most of the time it doesn't. Right. And the same sort of thing, only with way more variables, goes for diet and exercise. So how much of a person's health is genetic? How much of a person's health is training, fitness, what the regimen that they keep?
Yeah.
How much of it is just the kindness of God?
Yeah.
The providence of God. And are there people who do counterproductive things? They're so obsessed with health that they become unhealthy.
Yeah.
They think about it too much.
Yeah.
And other people,
which in the health industry is way more than we think.
Right. But other people, I grant it, other people are not healthy because they don't think about it at all.
Yeah.
They don't give it a thought, and they ought to.
Yeah.
But some people need to dial it back and think about it a whole lot less.
So, part of what me and Annie have been talking about since we started the show is, obviously science is not our God. God is our God.
Right.
And we have, in a lot of ways in America, we've put science above God and his word on this issue. Now, so we reject science not as not God, but we also want to define what's healthy. What's a good objective definition of healthy. We want to find a good definition of what's a good definition of overweight. What's a good definition?
I prefer to say not svelte.
Not svelte. I don't know what do you
non-svelte.
Non-svelte.
Okay.
Overweight is hurtful.
It's hurtful. It is hurtful and so vague.
Yeah.
So
Very
let's say I'm non-svelte.
Okay.
Non-svelte.
And that's part of like what has bothered me so much about the health and fitness industry is like your definitions are also going to probably change in 20 years. They probably, BMI, whatever, and so how do you, when you sort through scriptures, and I remember, and it maybe is in Confessions of Food Catholic, you gave the example of Daniel in Babylon, where Daniel goes into Babylon and he asks basically to be fed vegetables. And the king's servants like, please no, that's going to make us look bad, and the king will get on us, basically. Right. And Daniel said, basically talked him into it, and the king's servant said, okay, we'll revisit your weight in a week or two. Right. And it turned out after this, God had blessed Daniel, and he'd gained weight.
Well, it actually doesn't say weight.
His complexion got better.
His complexion was better.
Yeah.
He gained health.
He gained health. Yeah.
He gained a glow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't we all want that?
And so I guess part of what I want to try to get at in this part of this discussion is like, how do we kind of objectively, kind of sort through, what is good health? What is a good weight? What is,
Yeah, I would love to hear how you define health. No one defines it.
Okay, so this is this leads into my very favorite question, probably, which is by what standard?
Yeah, right.
Right. Okay, by what standard? When we praise or blame anything? If it's aesthetic, there's criteria there. If it's moral, then the criteria have to be scripturally grounded.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful.
The scriptural issue when it comes to this would be gluttony. Okay?
Yeah.
So
right.
Gluttony is one of the 7 deadly sins, and it really was a big deal in the Old Testament. Parents could bring a wastrel son to the city elders, and he's a drunkard and a glutton, and
he could get the death penalty for acting that way. Up to that.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
So if you look at all the instances of gluttony in the Bible where that word is used, it's never talking about the second helping of mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving.
Right.
Gluttony is to food what falling down drunk is to alcohol.
It's a good glass of wine.
No, it's a glass of wine is great, and a feast is great. But when someone drinks 3 bottles of wine and they're crawling around trying to find their bedroom, that's falling down drunk.
That's gluttony.
That's when you bring that over to food, which in the ancient world. In the ancient world, there were gluttons who gave themselves to orgiastic eating, where they would eat and then make themselves throw up and then eat some more, and it was just it was a sensate approach to food. And it's important to note that Jesus was accused of gluttony. And gluttony and drunkenness go together. They said Jesus was a glutton and a wine bibber.
That's right.
Because he went to certain kinds of feasts. And so that's the biblical issue. If someone's a glutton and they are given over to food, they're just licentious when it comes to food. That's the scriptural moral issue. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Now, but there are other things. So if we want to strive for excellence in every area of life, what is it you're wanting to do? What is it you want to achieve? This goes back to the point about teleology, right? So if I could be autobiographical,
please,
for a minute.
Sure.
I've been married 49 years so far. Next year is big 50.
Big 50.
Big 50. During those 49 years, I've been sick in bed one day. I had the flu one day, knocked you out. Yeah. It knocked me out. I was in bed for a day. And so the question would be, am I healthy? Well, yeah, I would say so. I would
Like, what do you want to do?
What do you want to do? I've been able to work. I've been able to go to work. Everything I want to do, I'm able to do. Am I ready to run a marathon? No.
Yeah, right.
No, but that's not on my schedule.
Right. That goes back to your point. Now, if you're going for the telos of the situation, if
Correct.
I'm going to play in the NBA, well, then I need to be exercising towards that way.
Yeah. If you whatever it is you're doing, you have to know what goes into that. Okay. Right. Now, one of the things that I would think that personal trainers ought to do is say, okay, this person there's some people that need to get off the couch. And if they got off the couch and they started exercising and they started doing a few basic things, they would be a lot less stressed, a lot happier,
cheerful,
more cheerful,
feel better about their life in terms of.
So there are people who do that, and it's just a great blessing. But there are other people who get onto the worry wart conveyor belt, right? And it's whatever it is they're doing, it's never good enough,
right?
And they're obsessing all the time and looking in the mirror all the time, and oh no, that person needs to lighten up. Other people need to tighten up.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
So I want to complicate this a little bit, or maybe it doesn't really complicate it, but you look at America, you've seen those black and white videos going around. America's in the 40s. They look more healthy than America in the 2024 kind of thing, or at least that's what they're trying to get at, right? Now I do think I think one of the things that we're trying to figure out now as Christians in the U.S. is that God has blessed us in such a way that He's blessed no other country in our time, and we don't know how to handle His blessing well, and particularly as it actually applies to food and stuff like this. We have refrigerators, we have access to food 24/7.
Yeah, like a real time of abundance.
It's crazy,
right?
How kind God's been to us,
right?
And then at the same time, there's cancer has increased, obesity, and I'm talking obesity like 500 pound morbid, more like unhealthy obesity,
on
like
a scooter in Walmart,
and there's morbid's probably the best way to put
obesity,
it. Your body's functions are going away because you're so obese.
Right.
King Eglon.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Level.
Yeah. Problems. And I would say, it's decently widespread. You got like this we're the first generation where we got like kids at age 6 or 7 got, diabetes. And they're weighing, 200 pounds kind of thing. And I think part of this really is we aren't handling God's blessings well.
Right.
I think the other part of this is it seems to me that we're, the industrialization of food, I think has been a huge blessing. And I think we've also done some pretty crazy things with it. We've been able to feed the world in a lot of ways with our industrialization of food. Can of green beans, fantastic, go all over the world, right? But at the same time, it seems like we're also, in some sense, you use the word poison, so I'll just use that here. I'm probably using a little different way than you would in your book, but we've kind of also introduced certain bad things in our food. I would say, like seed oils has been kind of it's all the rage right now, getting a lot of.
It's the current bad boy.
It's the current bad boy, yeah. But it seems that seed oils, and maybe Annie this is where Annie will come into the conversation a lot more than me. But things like that are introduced into food, and actually our body doesn't break it down as well, and it's causing more long term. You can use all the scientific words you want, but it's.
Sickness.
They
all seem to be on the rise.
It's like astronauts food lasts forever, and that's a great blessing because you're going up into the. But we've introduced some of those longevity in the food that your body can't break down as fast into our foods, and seed oils would be a good example of that. Not all seed oils are the same, obviously, but one of the ways that they made seed oils, they had to strip out all the bad. They make the oil, and it stinks to hog heaven. and they have to strip it out and fumigate it or strip out the fumes or whatever the bad smells in it.
They bleach it and then they deodorize it.
And then they
right?
deodorize it and then they
So
put
it
it in our
doesn't
food,
smell rancid.
So, and the food pyramid's upside down.
I'm getting hungry.
Yeah.
Yummy.
Yeah. But I don't buy all the seed food oil hype, but I do buy some of what seems to be being communicated in some of the studies that I trust on it.
Well, let's go to the poison point that I make in the book. The seed oils wasn't a big thing when I wrote the book, but it's a big thing now.
That's true.
It's the same.
It was in our food, just no one had a big point about
it.
Right.
It was but it's the same principle that's going on now. So if someone says, "Hey, is this processed food, is this good for us really?"
Mm-hmm.
And then they point to something like seed oils.
Yeah.
I think any reasonable Christian, any reasonable thinker should respond to something like that with, "Well, hey, let's check it out."
Yeah. Let's study it.
Nobody should say that's going to mess with my favorite food. No, I don't want to hear about it. Shut up. Be explained. There shouldn't be any of that. If someone says, if a responsible person brings forward a responsible thesis, we should investigate it.
Yeah.
We should check it out. The thing that I argue in the book is if processed food is poison, why are we not dead? It's like, so when you look at, go back maybe 100 years before the old videos of a century ago, if we had video footage of the men who fought at Lexington and Concord, the colonial soldiers who fought in the War for Independence, I bet you all of them were wiry, tough, strong, yeoman farmer types, okay, who would die in their early 40s.
Yeah, right. The average age of death was way lower than where we're at now.
So the question is, now I think if you point to the morbidly obese or the kids with the diabetes and things where something is obviously wrong. We shouldn't.
Obvious over here.
Obviously wrong.
Yes.
At the same time, a lot of our ailments and problems are the result of us living so long, right? So
74 for men, 76 for women, or something like that. That's the average age.
Right. But let's say the average age of mortality for men at some point in the fairly recent past, last few centuries, was, let's say, 55.
Yeah.
Okay. They died in their 50s.
Yeah.
Men who died on average in their 50s are not going to be confronted with any of the geriatric problems. Their knees are not going to go out.
Their knees are still good. Yeah. Right.
So one of the things is we're grappling with some of the consequences of the blessing. So as mortality has gone longer, we live longer, then I've already lived longer than my grandfather.
Yeah.
Right. And significantly.
And your dad died at 94?
My dad died at 94.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've not outlived my father, but I have outlived my grandfather.
Yeah.
And if I went back to great grandfather, okay, probably significantly.
You doubled it. Yeah.
Yeah. So when and this goes back to by what standard? Define health, define longevity, define quality of life.
Well, but here's where I want to push back on that point is because I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but we've introduced vaccines and we aren't allowed to study if there's a connection to autism, right?
All rise.
All rise, right? But we also, where did autism come from? Where did allergies come from? I remember growing up and never heard hardly anything about a peanut allergy, and now it seems like almost everyone has a peanut allergy. Right. I'm not blaming that on vaccines. I'm just saying it seems like there is something going on in our food or in our environment where it's like, I agree with you. We live longer than we ever did before, and we're probably dealing with some health things we got to figure out now with that. But it also seems like there is something in our food.
The kids would be different. So let me give you an example. There's certain things that, take autism, for example, and I'm not saying anything about the causation. I know
yeah.
I know nothing.
Well, I don't know either because we can't study it. We don't. RFK is like, hey, let's study this.
But when you talk about vaccines and autism, there's a whole sector of the country that's talking about it.
Yeah,
a bunch of people talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know, for example, if I went on some national television show and someone said, "What do you think is the cause of the uptick in autism in young kids?"
Yeah,
and I said, "Daycare centers."
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Right.
That would be something that we wouldn't be able to talk about.
Yeah.
I would be lynched.
Yeah.
Right. Because
well, I'm saying it used to be. It's getting a little more kosher to talk about vaccines and autism now.
Yeah, because of COVID.
Because of COVID. But 15 years ago, you were not allowed to bring that up. You get the same reaction on national TV.
You were not allowed to do it on CBS.
Yeah, right.
But there was a whole
moms group.
There was a whole moms group that was
yeah.
pushing for it.
Yeah.
And so I would say, let's discuss it. I think anything should be researched, discussed.
If it's a good thesis,
if it's a thesis, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
But with human beings, the variables are so many.
Yeah.
So, might the fact that a kid at 6 weeks, the mom's maternity leave is over 6 weeks, she goes back to her Dilbert cubicle.
Yeah.
And her son doesn't bond with her because
she's not breastfeeding him or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Is that worthy of checking out? Is that and all I want to do is, hey, let's
talk about the variables that could impact.
Let's research.
Yes.
Let's get a control group and look at this.
Yes.
Let's look at kids who let's look at the autism rates among kids who never saw the inside of a daycare center and the autism rates. Yeah. So there are certain things that are
same thing with like HD. What's that? That's
ADHD.
ADHD. Same thing. Yeah. Who didn't go to public school? Who went to Christian or mom?
Right.
Whatever.
So there's certain things certain techniques, certain practices that are justified. So, for example, if you really wanted to get shouted down, you could talk about the cancer-causing potential of the pill.
Yep.
Birth control pill. Right? 100%.
Birth control pill.
100%.
Because America wanted the birth control pill.
Yep.
And was going to have the birth control pill come hell or high water.
Yep.
You're not going to be allowed to talk about it.
This is the same conversation with Ozempic.
Yeah. So what we want to do is say and a lot of this goes back to funding. You can research. We're in a country where you are still allowed to research things if you have the money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
What has happened is because the federal government has gotten into the research funding game.
Yep.
What that does is introduce politics into the research.
Yep.
So instead of the disinterested pursuit of the truth, privately funded, let's produce a study. What happens is the government funds you, and if the government funds you, there are certain answers that are not politically expedient for you to come up with.
Right.
And so what I want to do, if for a lot of this mess, what I want to do is get the government out of funding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amen.
Research.
Maybe I would like you to kind of push a little more on the food side of things, seed oil, stuff like that.
Sure. I've got plenty of questions. So I guess back to what you said. You said, you've lived longer already than
grandpa.
Than your grandpa. And so, and you made the point that like you go back, 100 years or whatnot, like some of those men, they probably look healthier than a lot of men now, but they probably died at the age of 40. Yeah. And that's a valid point. I guess where my brain goes there is like, and I agree with you, because you said with human beings, there's tons of basically confounding factors. So a lot of times I agree. I think outcomes are attributed to the wrong thing. A lot of the time, it's very easy to do that. Right. And studying humans is just hard. But I do, maybe to one of Gabe, maybe the point that you were trying to make, I do think that, when we look back in history before they had penicillin, for example, you're going to see people die, or, before they figured out germ theory, you're going to die of child, a lot of people die
basic
of
sewer treatment,
or you die in the mines, you know what I mean? So I think a lot of times, life expectancy was short then because of things like that, which I'm sure we agree on.
Yeah, we agree.
And now, yes, people can live a lot longer. But I guess my question, and I have these sorts of questions because this is what I do, and I work with people every day in and day out, young, old, whatever, trying to help them feel
She's
better.
a counselor, really, is what she.
I mean, it really is. It's crazy. It's a crazy job. But I guess one conclusion that I've come to doing what I do is that it seems like the American food and medical complex is pretty good at dragging somebody's lifespan out, but we're not that good at people really thriving and feeling good. And
dealing with the root causes.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of
we
people
got stories
agree with
after
that.
stories.
I think a lot of people agree that our medical model is like, let's just give medications for things. We're not necessarily going to try to figure out why this particular thing is happening in the first place. But I guess part of something I've noticed is that a lot of people seem okay with this approach. Like, to your point, what is health? Like, well, I'm able to get up in the morning. I'm able to get to work. I'm able to not be sick too often, or,
Yeah.
But I find that a lot of people, when they make small changes, they clean up their diet, they move a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot, eat a little more protein, eat a little more vegetables, then they come back to me and they're like, I feel so much better. I just didn't know how bad I felt before. You know what I mean? So I guess my point is, I think there's a difference between surviving till you're 90 or whatever versus thriving. And I don't mean that like be the best you can be. I mean, if you're thriving, how much better of a husband, a wife, a grandparent, a great grandparent, Christian can you be? And I do agree with Gabe that there's something going on right now. And you're right. You can point to the obvious things like the really, really, really fat children, like what's happening here. And I agree. That's the E, the A on the eye chart, the E on the eye chart. But like, I do think we are seeing a rise in all of these things: diabetes, blood pressure, coronary heart disease. And you're right. Some of these things, you have to live a certain amount of time for them to get you. Right. To your point. So if you die in the coal mines, you just may not have time for cancer. But the rates are going up, and the onset is earlier and earlier, which it's got to mean something. It's got to be disconcerting to some degree. And none of that is to say that like these foods evil, these foods good, or anything. Like, I agree with your assessment that you can't really put a moral right or wrong on food. But I do want to know your thoughts as to like how Christians should be thinking about like, okay, if I put this kind of food in large amounts chronically into my body, and that puts me on this trajectory, how much do we need to care about that being post-millennial, right? And then secondly, like if you eat a certain way, and I'll just use a mom for an example, because I hear from them all the time. If you're eating in such a way that you have headaches all the time, you're crabby, you're snippy with everybody around you, you like have mood disorders, you have blood sugar problems, which is a lot of women.
Depression or whatever.
Like it really is affecting you. Would you say that's wrong?
And while recognizing, recognizing those are all sins, like depression and stuff like that, but it's like there's also sometimes it's a practical, it's a practical solution. Beyond confessing sin.
So, for example, physiological problems don't excuse sin.
That's right.
Any more than a roaring headache excuses yelling at people.
Right.
Right.
Your kids, whatever.
But it might help to take a couple of aspirin. And then you don't yell at people. So
it's amazing.
But with the headache, I was short with everybody because I have this migraine. I've got this problem. There, you've got one variable that a reasonable, intelligent person could swap out. Okay, I took the Advil, and the headache went away, and I wasn't feeling hassled the same way. Didn't want to yell. You've made the adjustment. You've done rudimentary science. Okay,
right.
So when we look at the diabetic kids, or the pre-diabetic kids, or the morbidly overweight kids, and that kind of thing, it's clear and obvious that needs some sort of explanation. Okay. And we need to check it out. But we live in a time where it's very easy to go to a dietary explanation, because when I was a kid, you were turned out of doors after school and you played until 9 p.m.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. You were running around.
It's a huge part of the conversation.
Movement is a huge, and so this kid who's overweight, he's sitting on the couch, swiping right, swiping right,
getting depressed, no sun.
Thumbs
are in good shape.
Thumbs are in good shape.
And obviously, diet might be a contributing factor. It might be a significant one, but it might also be the fact that this kid is growing up without discipline.
and a relationship with his parents.
Right. The parents, instead of parents sort of spurring children on to love and good works, shuttling them outside, go climb that tree.
Yeah.
Instead of doing that, parents say it's easier to put them in front of a screen.
Yeah.
It's easier to keep them quiet. They drive me bonkers otherwise.
Right.
Because a lot of our problems in our public school system and a lot of our problems in parenting have to do with us not knowing how to handle boys.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
The ADH thing is
boys are rowdy.
Yeah.
And we would much rather give them something to conk them out.
Yeah.
Hit them, so kids go to school and the school nurse drugs them up. The sign outside says drug-free zone. And I think, yeah, right.
Right.
That's great. It's not a drug-free zone.
Yeah.
It's no drug-free unless administered by the school nurse.
Right.
So the central factor in my thinking, the first place I would check would be the lifestyle of the family.
Yeah.
The interaction of dad with his son.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What sort of, do they sit down at a meal together every day? Is there discipline when it comes to things like schoolwork? Is there discipline when it comes to things like go outside and play? Is there restriction of screen time? There's a whole host of things. Now,
it's all connected. I agree with you.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
Now, when someone's on the couch staring at their iPad, there's nothing that is more attractive than going to get a snack.
Right. Yeah.
That's going to be
Doritos, boom. Yeah.
Yeah. You're right about that.
I remember talking to a Christian counselor. I think he's in Virginia. Virginia. And he was telling me back in the 70s, there's something like, one kid out of every 40 kids in high school would be on some sort of ADHD medication, ADHD
Ritalin
medication. Yeah, whatever.
Something. Yeah.
And he said now it's like 10 for every class now or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one for every, actually it's more than that. I think it's like 2 or 3 kids in every school or something like that. Now it's, classroom. And so I 100% agree. I think the family relationships and not getting outside, not pushing them, not work ethics is very much a part of this
Right.
kind of stuff too. But I still, it still seems to me that, I basically kind of stopped. I mean, I still eat seed oils. I'm not scared of them at all.
I drink them out of a glass.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you fill it up. You get home and Nancy's like, "Here's your castor oil." Whatever.
No, Nancy. Cheers.
But I stopped eating these. None of my lifestyle changed. I mean, I coach during the winter and work on the yard during the summer. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really moving much more. I'd say I do a little bit with cash more. I do more with cash now than I used to. But I kind of got off seed oils. I kind of stopped eating big industrial bread.
You stopped eating out.
And I stopped eating out as much.
Yeah, we just got a lot more mindful about that.
And then but I lost 15 pounds just doing that. I'm still eating. Annie still feeds well. We cook good big meals at home. So I don't know so much if food consumption dropped as what I did changed.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with everything you just said about the kids, and I think it's all connected.
Yeah.
But I do. In the fitness industry, any trainer worth their salt agrees to the old adage that abs are made in the kitchen. Another way of saying that is you cannot, it doesn't matter how much you move, although movement is so good. But in terms of you're
saying food first is what really
food is 85 to 90% of it for most people.
And that was Ben Greenfield's point. It's you just stop drinking
weight.
Coke and walk a little bit. And you'll be fine,
in terms of managing weight, that is true. And that's why you've had such great results. You're not running, you're not strength training, although those things would be great for you and they're good for your body for a lot of reasons. But that's true.
We also we're in the first, again, God's been so kind to us. I have a desk job.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, if I went back to 1800s and told people, what do you do for work? I was like, well, I sit at a computer for 8 hours a day and make phone calls.
Right.
It'd be
time.
There's no wheelbarrow involved.
No dirt work, no nothing, no farming,
People
kind of
do
thing.
that and then they hurt themselves now.
So I do think that's why, I think gyms are helpful now, which is a weird concept, is because I can go work out since I didn't work on the dirt for work during the day. Now I can go work out. We're the first, economy to be able to support gym membership.
It's kind of
Well, but
hilarious
see, but
to think
here's
about that.
but here's the thing. There's an, and this is I'll come around to the point here.
Please.
There's an inverse relationship between the number of marriage books and the number of happy marriages.
You mean the more the books come out, the
more
worse marriage.
Happy
it
marriage.
is?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
We've never
Yeah.
when my folks
100%.
when my folks were my dad was converted at the Naval Academy. My mom when she was a teenager.
Mhm.
When they got together and got married, there was in the Christian world when it came to instruction and teaching on marriage, there was nothing.
Mhm.
There was not a network of Christian
Except for an older
bookstores.
guy, maybe in your church, older husband and wife. That's it.
There was, it's just and so my folks said, okay, we've got Bibles. Let's just
See what it says about marriage. Yeah.
see what it says about marriage and try to live that way.
Yeah.
And the more problematic our marriages get, the more a cottage industry of marriage books and marriage helps has exploded.
Same thing in the gym health industry.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So
That's your
And
point.
it's been awful. And
This
they
is
spend
a
millions
small
and hundreds
town.
of millions of dollars on that. Yeah.
This is a small town. How many gyms are there?
There's
Like,
like
way
4.
more-
I think there's
lot.
4. There's North Idaho.
yeah.
There's Snap Fitness. There's
And
Anytime.
then like another
There's a
one.
Plus
Mission.
one's moving in town.
It's like real.
And then of course
it's like
University
real
of Idaho.
estate.
University of Idaho. So
I
there's
don't
probably
know
5
how-
at least.
I don't know how they're
Yeah.
staying in business.
Right.
But
So
they're here.
five gyms
Yep.
for people to use, and it's a population of 22,000
Yeah,
people,
right.
Mhm.
right? And so, okay, is this a sign? Is this a symptom of our disease?
Right.
Right? Is it a drive? Is it a contributor
Yeah.
to it?
Or is it really solving a problem?
Or
Yeah.
is it ameliorating a part of the problem?
Yeah.
So let's say, and I'm guessing that it's all of the
It's probably,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
mix
yeah.
of all of it.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure. Yeah. No, that's
Yeah, I wasn't using that as like a
No,
anything.
well,
The reason why I don't go to the gyms because I'd prefer if I'm going to do something, I want to be outside with my son. Right. It's like, but I do see the benefit of it. In it. How do you, baby? You got any, more questions to push on this?
I was
Please,
just gonna say
please.
this is kind of neither here nor there, but to your point, that's once again reiterating what I believe to be true is that your overall lifestyle and the food you put in your body has way more impact on your health than whether you step foot in a gym ever. And that's coming from someone who like works in a gym, but I truly believe that's true.
Right.
I think it's important and it's helpful. And like you said, a lot of us don't have the ability to move our bodies as much throughout the day as we'd like to. Dads more than moms. Being a mom's a very actually physical job, which is nice. But I think it's good. It's food, sleep, all those things. But,
So I was if I'm hearing you rightly, you're saying kitchen first,
yes,
exercise, working out,
Periphery.
whatever,
Big time.
a distant second.
Yeah,
Right.
Especially if, like you said, you're not training for a marathon. In that
Right.
case, you don't do that. Don't go try to run a marathon if
Right.
you haven't trained.
Well-
Don't go sign up for a powerlifting competition if you're not ready. But if you're just like, I want to be a healthy human, I want to be a good wife, be a good mom, be a good, whatever, last reasonably long, see my grandkids. Yeah, kitchen first. And I actually, on that point, I think one of the biggest reasons that we're seeing Americans' health be so poor right now, and I think there's a lot of things, but one of them is that moms left the home and they're not making food at home anymore, and they're not eating, or the family's not eating normal food. They're going and in it, at best it's fast food 3 times a week. And I have no issue with fast food, but like if you extrapolate that out, over years and years and years, I think that's a huge problem.
Well, and I think related to this too, again, we're, God's been so kind to us in America. Like basically every night here, we have a Sabbath dinner in America. It's a 3-course meal. We could have a glass of wine with it. It's like,
Or you can.
you can.
You could have ribeye every night.
That can't happen in, in a third world country. They're
couldn't-
lucky to get a bag of rice.
Couldn't happen in the early 20th century
Right.
Yeah.
in America,
Yep.
where you would get meat once a week.
I know.
Yeah, right.
The carnivore
Yeah.
diet.
Yeah, could do.
such a huge
And I think my
privilege.
point is, this just goes back to
Huge
my
privilege.
initial point where it's like, God's been so kind to us and we need to learn how to handle his blessing well. And maybe part of it is, and part of that is I think we need to understand, like, gosh, we can have a feast every night and afford it. Poor family like us could afford it, whatever. I want to address kind of one thing that I've found pretty laughable, and then we'll be done. Got a couple minutes left here.
Okay.
Something that's pretty laughable in all this is in the Reform camp, particularly in the Reform world right now, in the Christian world. I mean, I can't, there's all these guys putting out AI, pictures of themselves looking beefy and bulky, right?
Yeah.
And then related to that, I've seen it multiple times where some fathead in the Reform world says, if your pastor is fat, don't listen to him.
Right.
If he's fat by whatever,
Yeah.
it's just, if he's fat, don't listen to him. When, what's funny to me is that guy, if he's the one who gains weight, he has more problem with his own principle than someone who's actually maybe big boned or whatever,
Right.
or overweight according to him.
Or non-svelte.
Yeah, come on, Gabe. We're not saying fat anymore.
Yeah. So I think there's a massive spiritual problem there in the way those people are thinking. And that's always me and Annie, we have this conversation because I see this over here. And she's like, well, I see this over here.
I didn't know that was going. I
she
didn't know that was
going
thing.
on.
He had to show me. I was like,
Yeah.
no way.
Yeah.
And apparently, yes.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at, where I'm like, who cares if I weigh whatever 30 pounds over, or I have a belly or whatever? Show me where that's wrong in scripture.
Right.
But what you're saying about not listening to your pastor because of this subjective thing that you're, I'd love your comments on that.
Yeah, man.
So one of the things that a lot of these guys do, I'll just make this some general observations. I don't have anybody in particular in mind.
Yeah.
Although I've seen quite a bit of this. It's easier. It's easier to name call than to answer an argument.
Yeah.
So if I write an article about something that ruffles the feathers of,
you're a boomer.
I'm a boomer.
Yeah.
I'm a boomer. I'm a fat boomer. Whatever.
Yeah.
But I was a gym rat for probably 20 years, maybe up to 20 years.
Okay.
Lifting weights regularly.
From that 20 to 40 spot or something like that.
So and then I quit going to the gym when I built my own house, and then that took 5 years. So I thought I don't need to go lift weights if I'm
Right.
True.
Come
I'm
on.
pastoring and building my house.
And the point about this is I've been in that world and been in that world for a long time and did well in that world. And then I'm transitioned into a more sedentary lifestyle. Because I'm getting older and because the schedule crowds in on me and I've got to get the next thing done, et cetera.
Yeah.
All of that to say is looking out through my eyeballs. It's not really all that different. So there are some people who say,
what's not really all that different?
Like how you feel?
Yeah. When you said, oh man, I feel so much better.
Okay.
You don't feel much different?
I don't feel different. I felt great. I enjoyed
The workout time.
I enjoyed the workout time and gave myself to it for quite a few years and did well there. And I enjoyed building my house. And so I've lived a very active life. Now, when someone is 28 and they are in the middle of that era that I was in for all those years, and they're making pronouncements about, in effect, they're making pronouncements about how much they're going to weigh when they're 75.
Yeah.
I'm saying, friend,
That's funny.
You don't know. Right. You don't know what age is going to do to your metabolism. You don't know you just don't know. And so we get our instructions from the Bible. So what do you do with the elderly in the Bible? You honor them. Right. You don't
make fun of them. You don't call them boomer. You don't.
You honor them. Now someone's going to say, well, that's self-serving for you to say that
because you're the elder brother.
Because you're believe me, I don't need the honor from someone who's
online.
If someone's being a troll online, I'm not going to lose any sleep because I didn't get honor from him. But I believe that he's going to lose something. So when
that's right.
Paul says, honor your father and mother, and the Westminster Larger Catechism expands that to your elders generally.
Layers of leaders.
It's the first commandment with a promise. Right? If you want your life to be blessed, if you want your life to be long in the land, that's a health benefit.
That's right.
A true health
coming from
benefit.
honoring God and His Word first,
and then as a corollary, honoring your elders.
Yes, correct.
Honor your elders. If you say, I'm not going to listen to you because you're fat.
Yeah.
And I say, well, I'm guaranteed 71 years.
At least.
How many are you guaranteed?
Yeah. What a.
Do you have any questions? Any thoughts?
Yeah. What a dumb ad hom. I mean, seriously.
Well,
come up with something better.
Last thing here. I know you got to go. I'm holding you. But
sorry. Yeah. So you get out of here.
Okay. One of the things me and Annie worked hard for on the show is to try to be as objective as we can when we're talking about people's health.
Yeah.
So, good things like, take your blood pressure, or get a blood panel. Like, it just shows objective things about you, as opposed to,
thought,
as opposed to like guessing, oh, you should take this protein, scoop or whatever and everything. So we've worked hard on that. And, any closing thoughts on just like trying to be as objective with your health as possible?
Yeah. I think that those who Paul says in Corinthians, those who compare themselves with themselves are not wise.
Yeah.
So you want to hold yourself again, by what standard? You want to have some idea of what the objective standard is outside yourself.
Yeah.
I just went to my annual checkup a few days ago.
Yeah.
And I believe, and they take your blood pressure and they, do all these things. And my blood pressure is generally, you might be dead. I don't have high blood pressure.
It's really low.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Well, we'll let you.
You deal with so much. That's impressive. Oh man.
That's not my blood pressure. Just so you know, we're opposite.
That's not most men's. Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to WaterBreak. Make sure you guys follow us, Cross Politic on Twitter. Follow download our app, Fight Laugh Feast app, and me and Annie will be back in the studio next week, so we should be pretty regular here for the next month or so as we're trying to dial in our schedule together. So thank you for joining WaterBreak. Appreciate you being with us. Share the show. Share it around. Thank you very much.
Wanted. Young men to rebuild Western civilization. Must be unafraid of pain, blisters, intellectual rigor, and a lifetime of long shifts with swords and shovels, digging ditches, repelling invaders, and reading stacks of books taller than their fathers. Must be impervious to manipulative women of all sorts, giggling virgins, cyber skanks, and even full cauldrons of Karens or hand-wringing clergy, but always seeking to hear and heed the words of Lady Wisdom. Immune to the leadership of hypocrites and LARPing online masculinitods, unaffected by abusive authorities, petty professors, and all brokers of official respectability. Willing to hoist the Jolly Roger and Johnny Cash's favorite finger whenever faced with idolatry. Long-suffering joy and determination required. Must be willing to dwell among the tombs and graves of the long dead, seeking truths that cannot die. Exhaustion guaranteed. Conflict guaranteed. Mortality guaranteed. New St. Andrews College. Liberal arts for the undaunted.